Great. So this course I'm going to be recording it using the Eclipse IDE, Integrated Developer Environment, which is what an IDE is what a developer uses to code because it just makes things a whole lot easier than just compiling, run, compiling, run, compiling, run. So I'm going to be using Eclipse IDE, and I'll show you guys how you can use a browser IDE, a specific one, to do the same things in case you don't want to download Eclipse IDE. As I skipped over the complete introductions, we are going to go backtrack a bit and talk about what this course will entail. So, coming over here to learn Java, and I am going to be covering all of these, learn the basics. I know that few people in mind, had to go over this, and maybe they didn't. That's why I had this video series, to teach these concepts that it taught, but trying to make it make sense in a video, of course. And so I'm gonna be going over these. Maybe I'm not gonna be doing it in order. I believe I'm doing compiling now. I'm gonna be doing running with arguments when I talk about arrays, and then everything else is gonna be in relatively the same order. And once that's done, I'm gonna be using my AP Computer Science A textbook to go over some of the topics there. And I'll just be covering some of the topics and using Java and anything not taught in both of this and the APCSA textbook, and are coming from the Geek for Geeks Learn Java website. I will go over, there is a lot. Like just scrolling through some of this, there's a lot of stuff. And yeah, that's the plan for our Java course, is to cover those three materials. And yeah, that's pretty much all this course is going to entail. It could be a while, could take a while. I'm not sure how long it will take. But yeah, I may even cover some Android development. Not really sure if you guys would be interested in that, but if you would, definitely mention in the comments, and there's a good chance I'll do it. Good chance. So that's basically what we're going to be doing there. And so now I'm going to talk about REPL.it. Basically, Replit is a browser IDE, is a browser IDE. It's very well implemented. Now for Eclipse, by the way, just do the default setups and stuff. I may go a more in-depth tutorial on how to do that, but for now, that'll be good. Uh, Basically, we're not doing Python. We're going to be doing a Java file. Doesn't matter what we call it, so I'm just going to leave it as is. You know, I will have a Java file in the description, but it will not be called main.java. And now, if you want to run those files in REPL, you gotta do something a bit different. Now, IDEs are meant to be used in the case of no longer doing compile run, but let's say you're using something like a Chromebook and you are unable to download Java or download an IDE. This is the closest. It's pretty accurate to just downloading Java and then running some of it. So anything you run here would just be good. You have basically two choices. You can either change the class name to main whenever you use my file, or you could do this next one, which is using the shell. You can use the shell. So basically, I'm just going to name this Hunter. Completely random name. No significance whatsoever. Hunter.java. So as you can tell when I run it, uh, it should give me an error, but since this is hosted on the cloud, it could take a moment. As Eclipse doesn't take very long, this can take quite a moment. Any day now. There we go. Unable to run. Main file, main.java, not found. As you can tell, there's no main.file. So, something we can do to supplement this is to first figure out what everything is. So as you can tell, we have the hunter.class and hunter.java. That means whenever we hit run, it actually does compile all of the Java files. That's something it does automatically. When it is compiled, it will generate the file called hunter.class. Once you have that, but okay, I'm going to backtrack a bit. So in order to get that, you first need to have, like to compile it, you have to do javat hunter not Java, Java, hunter.java. That's what you have to do to compile it. If it wants to load. Okay, that's a good sign, meaning that there are no errors. So now what you do is you remove the Java once it is compiled to run the class. Now you don't do .class. Instead, all you gotta do is Java hunter. And then we got hello world. That's what we printed out. You'll learn more about printing stuff out in the don't know if it's the next video or this video because I haven't finished editing the other one, but you'll figure it out today if you watch the videos. Um, so that's pretty much how you compile. Right, to start off our Java series, we are going to be discussing a simple hello world program and sort of like some basic syntax of Java. So to start things off, we're going to try and take things one line-ish at a time, but we're going to start off at line number 1, which is package hello world. Now, package hello world is basically telling the computer, hey, this file can be found in the folder. It's kind of package is like a folder for Java files, and it basically tells it, hey, this file can be found in the hello world package. And of course, these two things are what we call comments. Comments are just like little notes you can have that you do 2 lines, type anything. They won't be ran. They're just like text. They're just text. And now what I want to do before I go over this, I want to explain the print command, the print line. So on line 7 and line 8, we have two print statements of code. Basically, two co two lines of code that will print stuff out. But there is a difference between the two. So when we look at line 7, it's system.out.println. This will be printed. The ln stands for line. And basically, if I remove this, well, actually, I'm actually gonna take a step back. I'm rushing things. First, I'm gonna explain. This is basically saying the system. It's telling the system to display out, and then printing whatever's in here, which has to be surrounded in quotes. It has to. This is what we call a string. A string is a sequence of characters surrounded by 2 quotes. But it's just a data type that is just a sequence of characters. And going from here, it will just display, this will be printed. And now print will just print. Nothing special, just print. This will also be printed. And then when we run it, we see this will be printed. This will also be printed. What the print line does is after this is printed, it will go ahead and send this cursor to the next line of the console. So when we look over here, when we remove ln, just 2 prints and run it, this will be printed. See, this doesn't look right. Not good. But what it also does is it basically uses print with this \n option, which now when I run it, look at there. Started off at the next line. The /n option just moves the cursor down 1 line on the console. And then prints this off. Alright, so now that we've covered what exactly the print and print line do, now I will go more in depth on what it is we're looking at. So if we come here, starting off in line 5 and 4, 4 helps us with this. I got this little statement to sort of help understand what it is we're doing, because I feel like that's an important thing to do is to understand why it is or what it is we are doing. So starting off, this is a class. A class sort of tells the computer, hey, this file, this Java file is going to start here. So it doesn't actually start in package hello world. This tells it, hey, it can be found here. But the class sort of tells it, this is where it's going to start. And it's going to take another step back. And we're going to look at the what everything is. So public, public. This is what I call permission. These are the type of permissions it has. So a class has certain order it will follow. If you have no permissions, then I don't think it. Actually, I don't know. You know, we're going to experiment. We're going to experiment because it is always fun to learn. And we're going to run it, see what happens. Okay, so permissions, you don't have to have permissions. Permissions are not necessary. So I'm going to keep them because that's how it was, that's how the lessons on the website went. But a permission just kind of tells it who can access it. And public, that I have down here, means that anyone can access it. And class is going to be the statement. We are telling it that we're going to have class. Another thing I forgot to mention is a good way to remember the syntax of Java is a statement is going to have brackets. Code itself is going to end on a semicolon. The reason that is the semicolons tell it, hey, this line of code now ends here. And the brackets basically say, hey, this grouping of code belongs to me. So the class is the statement saying, hey, this is a class, this is where the Java file starts. So everything inside of these brackets is where the actual Java file starts. And then over here, so that's where we got statement. So permission, statement, and then name. Now the class name, because it's saying, hey, this is where the hello Java file starts, the name of the file actually has to be hello.java. It has to be whatever the class name is, otherwise the computer gets confused and returns an error. Because it does not know where that type of file is, if that's not what the name of the file is. So you don't want to confuse the computer, you want to actually run the code. So that's the class. We've covered class, and we've covered these, along with the semicolon, so we understand this. So now we're going to talk about the next statement, which is the public static void main statement. Now I have down here that the public static void main, like this whole bit right here, is the entry point of the code. Java needs something to say, hey, this is guaranteed to be run. It needs something to start it off running. And this sequence right here is what Java uses to say, hey, everything in here, this is what's going to start. This is going to start, this is going to be the thing guaranteed to run. The moment this file is ran, this method is going to run. There are exceptions to this rule, which I'll cover in a shortly later video. It'll be coming out this week, so, but I'll cover it. There are a few exceptions. But that is, if you want to run Java, you have to have at least one file to have this. Now, to actually explain it, of course, public static, those are our permissions. The static permission means that we can run this method without creating an instance of main. So, you can take that as you will. Basically, main has to be lowercase. You cannot have uppercase M. I thought it was uppercase, but I was proven wrong by myself. It has to be lowercase. That is the name of this statement. And that one is extremely specific, has to be main, since that is what this looks for. That's what Java looks for to be ran. So public static, we got those permissions. Void basically means this is not going to return anything. This statement has an actual name. I've been referring to it as statement because I haven't told you the name yet. But this is called a function. A function returns a value. But let's say you don't want it to actually return a value, you just want it to run some code. That's where you would use the void. You would basically use the void statement. Statement basically this is saying this is a function and it's not going to return anything. That's what void is telling the computer. And then main is telling it that this is going to be the main method. Now, other methods, of course, have more things like this. We'll cover this when we cover arrays, because it will make much more sense after we cover arrays, which will be, I believe, the next episode, next video. But the next video should cover arrays. So you can just ignore this fact for now. So right now, as of right now, we've covered package, what a package is, comments, what a class is. Uh, we explained how this works. So if you do change this name, you have to change the file name as well. You can't just change one without the other. Just always remember that. And then, so we covered classes. This is function. The main function that is going to run whatever code is in here. And then, of course, the closing brackets basically say, hey, this statement now ends, and hey, this statement now ends. Both statement of a class, statement of a function. Now, something I forgot to explain is a multi-line comment. A multi-line comment starts off with forward slash and a star and a I call it a star asterisk maybe. I don't remember the exact terminology for it, but you're gonna do forward slash uh star. I'm gonna refer to it as sorry guys, sorry. Brain just went away for a moment. So forward slash star and then star forward slash. This is the beginning of your multi-line comment, and this is the end of your multi-line comment. That's all the stuff we learned in this file. I'm going to go over the question and answer for the Learn Java Online practice. If any of you want to go ahead and do that, now would be the great time to do it, and I'm going to explain it. However, since it's just Hello World, there isn't really much you had to do. So, the file I have for that is just world. The prompt was to print Hello World to the console, and the code it was given to you was system.out.println goodbye world, and of course the output for that is goodbye world. All we had to do was change goodbye to hello. I don't really need to explain everything else because there's nothing really new to talk about. Alright, so now we are going to be talking about the I named it variable, but it's the next lesson on the Learn Java website. And I'm gonna be explaining it. We're gonna be going through the code. I think I may have added some things, removed some things. Not entirely sure though, because it's been a while since I've actually done this code. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna go over it. So, of course, we have our package, variable, and types. That's the folder it's coming from. Then we have our public class variable. Variables, our class statement here, which means our file is named variable.java. Has to be. And then we have our public static void main string args. Yes, all of that good jazz. And then, of course, we have that statement starting off, went too far down. And then now we have we have a lot more stuff to go over. So, something I didn't really mention last time because we were concentrating on syntax is data types. Now, all those characters, I'm going to come down here a bit, but all those characters that we had, actually, I'm going to open them back up. Hello.java, we can go back. So this, basically, to be able to print this, you needed to have two quotes. The reason is because you are initializing the data type string. String is a sequence of characters. Could be any character, as long as it is a sequence of those characters. And you can save that string inside a variable, or you can just print it. A variable is just something that stores a data type. So going back to variable.java, right here, you notice we have int my number. Basically, my number is a variable that is going to store the data type of an integer, which is just a whole number, no decimals involved. There are no decimals inside a whole number. And once we initialize it, you don't have to do anything else initializing wise. Basically, once you say it is an integer, it will always be an integer. You can't change the data type. Well, you can, but you can't change that exact variable's data type. We'll get into it later where we talk about casting, but for right now, you cannot change data types. And basically, they can store different numbers. So as long as it is a whole number, my number can store it. So another way to initialize this is int my number equals 5. Now you only, my number 2, this is my number 2, but basically, once you initialize an int, like an integer, once you initialize a variable, you no longer have to do anything with it initialize y. As I did say that, but not sure if I made it clear enough. You don't have to say this is an integer anymore. And if you do, you're going to get an error because the computer is thinking you're setting up two variables when you're not. You're just talking about one. So every other time you refer to this variable, you're only going to refer to it as my number, nothing else. You use equal sign to be able to say whatever's on this side of the equal sign, the right side, whatever's on that right side is going to be stored inside of this variable. And of course, this is just another way of saying the exact same thing of these two lines. Saves room is good. And then of course, we can print it off. And I'll show you the results afterwards. Now the next data type we have is decimals. So we have double and float. Double and a float are both decimal numbers. A double is just a more precise float, but a float is a bit more complicated to initialize, to create. Initialize is just another word for create. If I didn't make that clear, I don't think I did. But basically, float, you have to cast it either as a float or use F at the end of your number. Those are the two ways to initialize a float, but it's the same thing as an integer. You just have a decimal number. That's it. And then double, much easier to initialize, much more accurate. You just put in the decimal number and that's all you got to do. And then over here character. So like we have string, if you may have noticed, actually I'll get to that in a moment. Character is a data type which just stores a key, like I believe an ASCII character. We'll get into ASCII later. But basically it just stores a character. You do it, I think you can do either single quotes or double quotes. Let me make sure. I guess not. Only single quotes. Yep, you can only do single character is using single quotes. Getting my languages mixed up. That's okay. So basically character can only use single quotes. String uses double quotes. And then when we get over here, we talk about strings. Now string, as I mentioned what a string is, string you have to initialize it slightly differently because there is no string data type. So what we use instead, there are built-in objects in Java that we can use to initialize a data type. And there is no default string. So instead, we have to use the string object. Instead of just saying the data type string, we use the string object. We get into more, there are like two types of data types. We'll get into it. Oh, sorry, I'll scrolling down, I shouldn't have. Basically, we'll get into, I believe it's like primitive data types, but we'll get into that in a future video where we talk about the differences between them. Basically, the main difference we need to know right now is that this is an object and not your average data type. It's slightly different. That's all you really got to know. And objects are initialized a bit differently than a data type. You can just initialize it as like string s2 equals, of course, who. Was it just using so this gives you some more information that the string literal is stored in a string pool and this one is stored in heap memory. two different ways to do an object. They both work. You can still print stuff out for what we're accomplishing. Both of these will work. This one's less work, so if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine for right now. And now since it is an object, we can do some different stuff to it. And now over here, as you notice, we can also add strings. We can combine them by using the add symbol, the plus symbol. And I'll go ahead. I don't know. What else are we printing off? I'll cover that after. We'll go over one by one on what each print did. But yeah, pretty much the main thing is you can add, you can combine strings, and we'll print that off in a moment. Now, of course, we over here we've initialized an integer known as num, which is equal to the value of 5. And then here, you can turn numbers into strings. You can either cast it as a string, which we'll get to later, of course, as I mentioned earlier, or you can use the add symbol to do that. Now, something you can't do. Something you can't do. Okay, I guess this does work. Never mind. Keep getting my languages mixed up. Never mind. Uh, so something I don't think you can do. If you need to like have like two numbers together, I think that's what I was thinking of. If you need to have two numbers together, like say two fives, you need to have an empty string next to it, added together. I'll print that off. I'll show you examples with that because we're almost done. So, other than those basic data types, we have boolean, boolean, boolean. I hear it like pronounced different ways. And basically, boolean, I'm just going to refer to it as a boolean. But a boolean is a true or false statement. It's either true or it's false. And there are different true or false statements that we're going to get into the next video that we can use to do a lot of things with. So this one, of course, is just b equals boolean b equals false, and then you can change it to true because that is in fact boolean statement. Now I don't know why they had if statements in here because we haven't gotten there yet, but basically boolean this one's 2b equals false and b equals 2b or not 2b. Oh, I see what they did there. That's pretty funny. In a way. But basically, boolean b 2b is equal to false. Now this is what we call an OR operator. We haven't gotten to operators yet because it's covered in the next lesson. I don't know why they went ahead and talked about it a bit here, but OR is basically going to say if this value is true or this value is true. So if just one of these values is true, then B will be true. Since B is true here, and 2B, so that would basically make, if B is true, okay, well actually no, this is just going to be true. 2B is equal to false. And this says to be or not to be. The exclamation mark operator basically reverses whatever statement that is. So this is false, and the not operator will reverse that, making this true. So not to be is true, and to be is false. Since not to be is true, and just one of these values is true, just one of them has to be true, B is now true. So if B, basically this is saying if this is true, if this is true, this is a statement which I'm going to cover in the next one. But so if this is true, then print out 2b, which will be false. Now, this is, I think, some debugging. Now, these are more data types. These explain what each data type is. Byte is just one byte, just one number. It's a short number. But short is longer than a byte, but it's still very short as it's only 2 byte. That goes into binary. I'll have a lesson on binary possibly next week, but I will 100% be explaining what binary is. Uh, Binary, so a byte is just 8 ones or zeros, and short goes much further. Int goes further. Long is like when I mean further, I don't mean like times 2. I mean like possibly squared. Like it goes much longer. And then long is really long. A float is just a 4-byte float number, and a double is an 8-byte float number. Character is a 2-byte character, and Boolean is just true or false, and it's 1 byte. Doesn't have to be very big, just true or false. Going over here to this person, so this code basically says the children integer is declared, b equals children. So that's saying if this code exists, if this code was added, I don't know why I didn't, yeah, I do need that. So basically, b cannot equal children because b is a Boolean statement. Right now you're saying children is an integer I didn't mean statement, by the way. Integer, I meant variable, but children is an integer variable, and b is a Boolean variable. You can't combine variables. You can cast them, but even if you tried to like cast Boolean to int, it would not work because those are letters and int is number, and it would just not work. It's not how brains or CPUs work. Now this one's int a, Boolean b equals true, Boolean c equals false, a equals b plus c. They'll give an error because you cannot add Booleans together. That doesn't work. Those are that. So now we're gonna run it, and I'm gonna explain all of these. So going back over here, all it did was display my number, which was an integer variable. 5 is my number, and 5 is my number too. Just print off both of those. Getting over here, this just printed off all three of those. Prints off G. Uh, so of course, over here it's gonna print line. So since both of these are added together, if you would want a space in between these, you would have to put a space at the beginning of the string or after this string. Since you're adding both strings together, it takes them as they are, spaces and everything. So of course, if we run it again, that will fix that. And if you want to go one step further, go back and do \n, you run it, you set it up on the next line. So much better, much better. \n is very useful sometimes. And then of course, if we go back down, I have 55 cookies. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. If you want to have two numbers, you have to separate them with this. If you just do like that, run it, I have 50. Oh, never mind. That was me being dumb. I thought it would. I think you have to do it like this. Yeah. This is, I think, what I was thinking of. Yeah, I have 10 cookies. That's what I was thinking of. Well, anyways, now you have another option of things you can do. So you can do math in the middle of a string if you so pleased. I guess it doesn't really cover math a whole lot here. That may be next week, because we're trying to get through the Learn Java website basics. But yeah, I guess I don't really cover math. It's very similar to a calculator. Very similar. Um, let's see. Besides that, it prints off. So here it checks if B is true up here. So it runs this line of code, and it says system.out.println to be, so it is false. That is all of this file. Now it's time to go to the prompt, to the question it asks us for practice, so gonna explain it to you guys. So I'll give you roughly 5 seconds to pause the video, go try it, and then if you ever get confused, come back. I'm gonna give you the answer right now. Oh wait, wrong one. My bad. Let's see, variable S. Variable solution is what I meant by it. So, let's see. The prompt is to create all of the primitives except long and double with different values. And add them, I'm going to say add them, that's basically what it means. Add them into a string and print it to the screen so it will print hello world 2.0 true. And the code it gives us is byte 0 equals 0, string output equals w plus 0 plus w, and then system.out.output, which will just equal wow. Not very much in there. Not really where we want it to be. So, of course, they want us to use all of the primitives. They didn't really, I guess, explain. I didn't explain that. Uh, Primitives are not string. Primitives are everything is all the data types. So basically, all of these are primitives. These are all primitives, not an object, just data types. So going back, maybe that made a bit more sense. But we had to use all of the primitives. So of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess we didn't have to use all of the primitives. Create all of the primitives except long and double. That's why we had to not include long and double. So 6, which in the answer there are 6. And basically we use our byte for 0, short for 3, int for 1. But of course, I think we could actually use just about any of those as we wanted. And I believe the variable names don't actually matter as long as you get the right output. And D is just a blank, a space character, because we do need a space. Um, and then E, float E 2.0f. So that's just declaring a float without casting it as one. Oh, yeah, I told you I'd tell you about casting later. Basically, this is what is called as casting. I didn't think they covered it here. Casting is you can just call one data type another. So say, I'll just do this really quickly. Uh, Say we want my number as a double instead as a integer. We could do double um, number, and we'll just say my number 3 equals, and we'll say double. I don't really, I could probably just do lowercase double actually. Cast as a double, and then my number plus 0.5 semicolon. And I said 2, I meant 3. That variable already exists. And then we can just system.out.println and just my number 3. Printing off that real quick. And 5.5. So we changed it to a double. That's what casting is. Quick lesson on that. Now we're going back to the solution. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Going back to the solution though, basically they just use all of these in order to fill up certain spots. It was it did make you think a bit, I will say. Not necessarily hard in the aspect of you not sure what to do, just kind of like a puzzle, really, just a puzzle. Output, you just add all of them together in a string and then print it out. And you of course get Hello World 2.0 true. Alright, so that's going to cover the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, please subscribe or like the video. Both would help me out a lot. Thank you for watching this video all the way through, and have a great day.